Good evening and welcome to the City of Pasco Council meeting. The council thanks you for being a part of your city government. At meetings, the council takes formal action on items, holds public hearings, and conducts other business of the city. Agenda packets are available on the City of Pasco's website at www.pasco-wa.gov/agenda. This meeting is also being televised live on PSC-TV, channel 191, on Spectrum Cable in Pasco and Richland, and is streamed on the city's Facebook page, website, YouTube channel, and Microsoft Teams webinar. This and previous council meeting video is available on the city's website. Lastly, the public may submit their comments and or questions by contacting the city manager, city clerk, or by using the Ask Pasco app. And with that, Ms. Clerk, can we get a roll call?
Councilmember Campos.
Here.
Cotta.
Here.
Figueroa.
Present.
Hernandez.
Present.
Perales.
Here.
Mayor Milne.
Mayor Pro Tem Milne is
yeah.
back finishing up the other meeting back there, but he is here.
Okay, and Mayor Grimm.
I'm here.
All right, we currently have 6 present. We have quorum.
Thank you. Let's rise for the flag salute. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, we are moving on to number 4, the consent agenda. All items listed under the consent agenda are considered to be routine by the City Council and will be enacted by a roll call vote as one motion. There will be no separate discussion of these items. If further discussion is desired by council members, the item may be removed from the consent agenda to the regular agenda and considered separately. Would anyone on council like to remove any of the items? Nope, not seeing any. Letter A, approval of meeting minutes from January 5th. B, bills and communications, approving claims in the total amount of $6,229,294.35. Letter C, resolution 4693, professional services agreement amendment number 3 with RH2 Engineering Incorporated for design services for the process water reuse facility, phase 4 irrigation system farm upgrades project. Letter D, resolution numbers 4694, 4695, 4696, 4697, and 4698, Helena 1 and 2 development reimbursement agreements with Brochi Orchard LLC and Jubilee Foundation. And letter E, resolution number 4699, project acceptance for the citywide Gentech Enterprise Access Control System. Letter F, resolution 4700, service agreement between Hanford Mission Integration Solutions and the City of Pasco for use with the Emergency Vehicle Operations Course. And then Mr. Perales, if I can get a motion.
I move to approve the consent agenda as read.
We have a motion on the floor by Councilmember Perales to approve the consent agenda as read. Do we have a second?
Second.
Mr. Hernandez has seconded it. If we can get a roll call, Ms. Clerk.
Councilmember Campos.
Yes.
Councilmember Cotta.
Yes.
Councilmember Hernandez.
Yes.
Councilmember Perales.
Yes.
Councilmember Figueroa.
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Milne.
Yes.
And Mayor Grimm.
Yes, ma'am.
All right, passes unanimously.
Perfect, thank you. We're going on to number 5, proclamations and acknowledgements, and we have a very special one this evening. Miss Deborah is leaving us. Her last day is Friday. She promises with Crystal we are in good hands, but if you want to meet me up front. Miss Debbie, I have something I want to read to you.
Do you want to read the rest of the motions for the day?
Very good, we'll share. City Clerk, I guess I've never known how to pronounce your last name. Is
Barham.
It Barham, okay. City Clerk Deborah Barham, Appreciation Day. You get your own day, January 23rd, 2026. Whereas City Clerk Deborah Barham has faithfully served the City of Pasco since 2019, and you have. providing exemplary service, professionalism, and dedication to the residents of Pasco. And whereas during her tenure, City Clerk Barham had played a vital role in supporting the Pasco City Council, ensuring meetings were conducted efficiently, records were maintained accurately, and the legislative process was carried out with transparency and professionalism. Whereas City Clerk Barham has faithfully clerked 312 City Council meetings, demonstrating unwavering commitment, attention to detail, and institutional knowledge. And whereas she has officially signed 356 ordinances, 716 resolutions, helping formalize the legislative actions that have shaped the growth policies and future of the City of Pasco. And whereas City Clerk Barham has consistently upheld the highest standards of accuracy, accountability, and service, earning the respect and appreciation of city leadership, staff, and the community she served. And whereas her contributions have left a lasting impact on the City of Pasco, and her dedication to excellence has set a high standard for municipal service. And now, therefore, I, Charles Grimm, Mayor of the City of Pasco, Washington, do hereby proclaim January 23rd, 2026 as City Clerk Deborah Barham Appreciation Day.
Thank you.
And I encourage all residents to join in extending our sincere gratitude and warmest wishes to City Clerk Barham as she enters well-deserved retirement.
Yes.
Thank you.
I just want to say thank you. Thank you to the council for helping me grow and making me a better citizen. I want to thank staff for being amazing people and doing things that I think, how did they get that done? And I'd like to thank the audience, all of the citizens and just public people that come out and speak their mind. Aren't we glad that we live in a United States where we can do this? And so I'm really grateful to be part of it. And so thanks very much. Appreciate it very much.
Thank you.
Hey, Deborah, yeah. And we could have Harpster as well, since he was there too. Oh, come on.
Yeah, he was here for a couple of years.
Gotta wear that seat.
I don't think you like this very often. Oh, wow. Thank you, everybody. Oh, thanks. Thank you. Thank you.
Very good. Congratulations. You will be missed. Number 6, the public may address council on any items unless it relates to a scheduled public hearing. And we do have a public hearing scheduled tonight, so if that's what you want to speak about, please save that for later. This item is provided to allow the opportunity to bring items to the attention of the City Council or to express an opinion on an issue. Its purpose is not to provide a venue for debate or for the posing of questions with the expectation of an immediate response. Some questions require consideration by the council over time, and after a deliberative process with input from a number of different sources, some questions are best directed to staff members who have access to specific information. Citizen comments will normally be limited to 3 minutes each. Those with lengthy messages are invited to summarize their comments and or submit written information for consideration by the council outside of formal meetings. Lastly, when called upon, please state your name and city or county of residency into the microphone before providing comments. So at this time, we will open up for public comments. Come right on up, Ms. Mahoney. Just make sure you turn on the red button there.
It's on? Okay. Mary Mahoney, Pasco resident, to Pasco. In addition to my public records request made on 1/5/26 to council, add the following. 1. Provide the video of the Pasco City Council meeting on 4/1/19 with Pasco City Attorney Lee Kerr authorizing no due process at animal control and falsely stating WSU and animal control had terminated their contract. See Mayor Watkins, Councilman Serrano, City Manager Ziobro, and more. 2, Animal Control, now Tri-City Animal Services, TCAS, continues to send and sell our family dogs and cats to WSU for research, then they're killed. Provide animal control, or TCAS's permit, to operate as an animal research provider to WSU with no due process, with botched, cruel, and untrained, uncertified euthanasia methods. See the Tri-City Herald and the Washington State Attorney General file with 48 counts of animal cruelty, theft, untrained euthanasia employees, and more. See Tri-City Herald 11/26/25 with Attorney General file on 9/29/23. See Animal Control Ziegler files as well. 3, provide the Tri-City Animal Services insurance carrier and policy number, as well as the insurance policy number and carrier for Pasco. 4, provide the permit number 404 for floodplain development and all floodplain Clean Water Act reports. See photos regarding floodplain Canadian geese killed and 8 floodplain American bald eagles killed, and more. 4, provide all ULID, LID designs for my property with cost, start dates, U.S. mail notice, and all communications regarding harassment and retaliation against me and my property. See Ike Meyer Roundy for with the Pasco City Council for a playbook of Pasco. All requests are for the record via RCW 42.56 with notice to Pasco.
Thank you for your comments. Anybody else? Yep, step right on up, sir, in the front row.
My name is Sean Milligan. I'm the owner of the Three Rivers Ranch project in Pasco between Burns Road and Three Rivers Drive. Mr. Mayor, I'm not sure if you're going to have public comment on item number 10. If not, I'll address it right now.
No, this would be a good time to bring all that up. Thank you. We just can't take, per RCW's comment on, what is it, 9A, thank you.
Okay, so
You're totally good. Yep, would love
okay,
to.
so first of all, I'm not sure that these documents that I provided to the city council and the city staff were made part of the public record, as they weren't included in the city staff report. So can I give these to the city
Please,
clerk right now?
By all means, thank you for asking.
Okay, the first document I submitted was a letter from our attorney, Davis Wright Tremaine, addressing the proposed fee increase and the nexus surrounding the city's approach to these fees. The second one that I submitted was a letter that we had commissioned from Eco Northwest around the economic impacts of the proposed fee regimen. So I just wanted to put that on the record. Our decision to invest in Pasco was done after careful research. I live in San Jose, California. San Jose, California has the distinction of being the capital of Silicon Valley and also the most expensive place to live in the United States. Our median home price is $2 million. I've been in this business for over 20 years, and over the last 20 years, I've seen the city make bad decision after bad decision impacting our affordability, and I don't want to see this council make the same decision. Our decision to invest in Pasco was done after careful research. We are impressed by your population growth, your economic growth, a friendly business climate, and most importantly, affordability was the key consideration. For years, Pasco has been a standout in Washington State, a place where families can call home. Pasco has worked hard to maintain its reputation as a gateway to the American dream. Your commitment to the Housing Action and Implementation Plan and your efforts to keep this community accessible have not gone unnoticed. You've given many of your neighbors a quality of life that they couldn't find elsewhere in Washington State. However, today, I'm standing before you because this policy threatens that quality of life. I don't know if you guys watch the news, but I do, and you can't turn on a news channel without looking at affordability. Republicans and Democrats can't agree on much in Washington, D.C., but they can't agree on one thing. The American way of life is escaping American families. We're shifting from a nation of opportunity to a nation of locked doors. The American dream is being priced out of existence. Streamlining permits isn't enough. In California, we've passed over 100 new laws. The problem is none of these laws affect whether or not projects are going to pencil. The decision to massively raise fees, impact fees in particular, is a direct tax on the future of Pasco and its families. You are essentially telling young people, teachers, first responders, that the price of entry to your community is going up. Not because of the market, which is struggling, but because of your staff's recommendation to council. We recognize that infrastructure is vital to this community, and growth needs to pay for growth, as Mayor Stewart said. However, it's imperative that the city find a win-win approach to balancing the cost of connection fees with the ability to build this infrastructure. I ask that you guys tonight consider adopting something different than the staff has recommended. A full acceptance of staff's recommendation to implement the fee at the maximum would be shock and awe on the residential construction, which is the lifeblood of this community. Find a balanced approach. Adopt a fee that's 50% of the maximum fee. Phase it in over time. Allow projects that have submitted preliminary plats, who counted on certain assumptions when they made that investment, to move forward under the existing fee regimen. Find a win-win solution. Thank you very much.
Thank you for your comments. Anyone else for public comment?
Good evening, council members. My name is Amber Wade, who lives here in Pasco, and I am being displaced. And people assume I'm fine because I have a Section 8 housing voucher, but I am not. A voucher is not housing, it's a countdown. I have about 60 days to find a new unit that will accept it, pass inspection, and be livable. If I don't find a place in that window, I can lose the housing voucher altogether. That is displacement turned into homelessness. And here's the part that most people don't know. A voucher limits are higher in Pasco than they are in Richland, Kennewick, or West Richland. So there's an invisible line in the road. Cross it and the same voucher gets fewer places. That isn't real choice. That's policy creating a map where low income and disabled people can realistically live. That is segregation by outcome. I live with under $1,000 a month, and people say, just have your family pay for it. But with Social Security, housing help can count against you. If family pays housing costs directly, it can, excuse me, my health issues, benefits, my words are not coming to my mental health decline, can trigger overpayment, meaning the help that prevents homelessness can turn into debt or lose my benefits altogether. So I am racing a deadline that with the rules that punish the safety net. The apartments I'm looking at are disgusting, unsafe. Let's just pretend that I could find an apartment for $500. First month's rent, $500. Last month, $500 a deposit, pet deposit application fees. That alone would trigger $1,350. However, that is not realistic numbers. The total cost for a $1,000 apartment would be the breakdown of total moving cost $5,140. Where am I supposed to get this kind of money on Social Security when you have a limit of $2,000 of that you can have in your account? I cannot save, and this leads to homelessness when I have done nothing wrong but use my voice.
Thank you, Ms. Wade. Anybody else for public comment? Mr. Padvort, come right on up. Sorry we couldn't squeak in last week.
Apologize, sorry for the procedural mistake
No,
on my
you're,
side.
you're good.
Good evening. It's nice to see some familiar faces, and congratulations to the new faces on council and the people who are re-elected. I'm excited to see what you guys have in store for the city. I'll follow after the mayor and do a quick acknowledgement to Debbie. I've known Debbie for 5 or 6 years, I think. Amazing civil servant and a blessing to the city, so I appreciate her service. I'm here to talk about Resolution 4804, the water and sewer utility rate connection fees. I'm a land use consultant who works with some large developers and landowners in the area. I'm also collaborating with the Tri-Cities Home Builders Association on this matter. At a high level, because we have some new council members, so I'm kind of trying to average the conversation to fill in some gaps. Staff makes recommendations, and then council is responsible for making the best decision they can make given the information they have, which is a challenge. You know, you're working with people who you might have a person of 30 years of experience of a very niche scientific field, and then they ask you what you think should be done for the city of Pasco. So it's a challenging job, it's a difficult job, probably requires a lot of evening and nighttime reading, trying to figure out what's going on and what you should do for the city. So acknowledge that and appreciate your service in that. To that extent, there's some feedback that was provided back in November regarding this matter that was before some of the council members are sitting on the dais now, before you guys were in your seats. And so I'll work on bringing people up to speed a little bit. There was a few concerns raised back in November. One of the concerns was the data be provided, and some data was subsequently provided, so that box got checked. There were, however, some significant concerns that weren't addressed that were raised back in November regarding this matter. There was a stakeholder outreach session, and there were some answers, but there were some fairly significant questions that are still outstanding after that. I wasn't able to attend that meeting in person, but I did coordinate with those who attended to make sure the concerns were raised. Some of the concerns that were raised back in November that haven't been addressed yet is the rationale for the fees. So typically utility connections are a fairly complicated matter because it's the financial model of your utility and then the financial model of how you're going to fund it. And so there's usually like a 100 to 300 page report that documents all the assumptions and compliance with state law and things like that. And all that was provided for stakeholders and council to review was some fairly large, 10 to 20 tab spreadsheets, which isn't really accessible. You can't see the assumptions. It looks like some of the items included in the pricing were deteriorated infrastructure, not new capacity enhancements. And there's several other bullet points, but I'll skip because I'm watching my clock here. Based on what's in your packet and what I passed out, there's a resolution that requires packets to be provided a week in advance, and that wasn't done on this resolution. I reviewed it yesterday, and I caught 9 pages that had discrepancies or typos on them. and I quickly scanned this afternoon when it was posted. It looks like they're still there. So at high level, I have some technical concerns, which probably need to be addressed through staff, and hopefully we get a response. But also just administratively, there's problems with the packet as it stands currently. So my hope would be that staff would separate those two items: monthly service rates, connection fees. Service rates have to pass soon for funding. Connection fees do not. My ask would be to split those apart.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Padvork, appreciate it.
Thank you, Mayor.
Anybody else for public comment? Yep, I see a little hand in the back. Oh, thank you, come on up. I just couldn't see the arm it was attached to.
Good evening, Lori Thompson, Pasco. Since I last spoke 2 weeks ago regarding the fact that in West Pasco, the nightly assaults in the form of loud and obnoxious M80 type mortars and other kinds of illegal aerial fireworks over the supposed peaceful season of Christmas, I come again tonight to beg, please, on behalf of many residents, war veterans, and myself, that the city address this problem in a way so as to curb the activity sooner rather than later, please. For the last several nights, there was again an increase in the number of nightly and early morning blasts. It's been said that these were the result of people celebrating some non-local sports event. Councilman Leo Perales posted to Facebook a letter the city received from one longtime Pasco resident, an elderly war veteran, also begging, he used those words, that something be done about this ongoing and most disturbing illegal activity, relaying how miserable it is for him and his wife, who is suffering a debilitating condition, to have to endure these assaults. The one post garnered over 319 comments, the majority also expressing concern and distress over this situation. Other posts have also been made on alternate social platform for Pasco neighborhoods, also expressing frustration and displeasure with the inconsiderate among us. These posts have also, in a few days' time, garnered at least 40 comments. Suffice to say, this isn't just a few residents. We pay our taxes, utilities, bills, we keep our property up. We have a right to enjoy our property in peace. I don't know what it needs to be employed to take care of this illegal activity that adversely affects so many of us, our pets, our landscape, and the few wildlife we enjoy living among us. But again, we are begging you to enforce the law against these activities. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Thompson. Anybody else for public comment? Yes, Mr. Heyer, come on up.
Matt Heyer, Tri-City Association of Realtors, Kennewick, Washington. You heard some really good points, I think, tonight on this connection fee increase. I like to simplify things, and I think I can kind of summarize. Mr. Milligan brought up a very real potential crisis of affordability. I think, unfortunately, we all saw that in action with this next lady. I'm sorry for what you're going through. I think that could be something that's more commonplace with the decisions that are made tonight. And the engineer said some engineer stuff that I kind of numbers and yeah. So that's not really why I'm here. I think that what I see is there's a lot of unanswered questions and a lot of people coming from this from different angles, because this is it's going to have huge ripple effects. I wish Risha was here tonight when we had our stakeholder meeting on January 7th. I'd asked about the rate studies. I did find them, and the spreadsheets were great. The mathed. Just not typical rate study that you'd see in a situation like this, but I brought up a separate issue kind of at the end, and she mentioned about the projections that they'd pulled from the Department of Commerce. So I guess what I wanted to throw out there tonight, Council members, I want to be very clear, this is not an argument that the city used the wrong growth forecast or miscategorized projects. My concern is proportionality and timing. By the city's own presentation, these connection fees are based on a 20-year growth projection from the Department of Commerce and fund capacity far beyond what a new home built in 2026 will actually use. Washington law allows connection fees only to the extent they're proportional to the impact of the development paying them. When today's housing is charged up front for decades of future capacity, that will not be needed for many years. While long-term system replacement is already recovered through rates, it creates a serious legal risk even if every spreadsheet balances. All I'm asking is for council to pause this vote briefly, and I think there are other strong arguments to do so, and just require staff to clearly show in writing how much capacity is actually needed in the next 5 years, how much of this fee pays for that near-term need, and how the remainder is not an unconstitutional prepayment for future users. Commerce projects growth, does not authorize the shifting the financial burden of future growth onto today's buyers. Timing matters, and I think there's actually case law out there that supports that, typically 5 to 10 years. So that was kind of how we'd left off the stakeholder meeting, and it just took a little while to uncover that. Again, this is a November meeting, but coming from a stakeholder meeting on January 7th, there just wasn't a ton of time to prepare. But basing the growth rate off of a 20-year projection from the Department of Commerce doesn't math, and I don't think you can find any other city in the state that actually would support that right now. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Heyer. Anybody else for public comment? Good evening, Mr. Dockstetter.
How are you today?
I'm good. Thank you for asking.
Good. George Dockstetter, Pasco, Washington. My wife and I own Desert Hills Realty. This year will be our 50th year. So we've seen Pasco go from 8,500 people to 85,000 people while we've been living here since '69. And the affordability question that everybody brings up on the sewer connection, I brought it up when you did the impact fees for the Pasco School District. $4,600. I said it's going to cost everybody in the city $8,700, and I was wrong. Prices went up $10,000 the first year. And that's not just new houses, that's existing homes. So all of a sudden, $10,000 increase means you've got to make $25,000 a year more to afford the same damn house. And that's what's going to happen again. When you keep putting impact fees, you're knocking affordability in the creek. And the other thing I wanted to bring up that irks both of us and several other people I know, because most of you I've supported through the Republican Party. We've got a few new ones I haven't met yet over the years. But you guys sit here and staff over there, the bureaucrats, are telling you what the hell to do. It's supposed to be the exact opposite. You guys are supposed to be the leaders of the city, and you're supposed to tell staff to implement your plans and your ideas for the city of Pasco. But all I've seen over the last 10 years is the exact opposite. It's not the citizens that you represent telling you what they want. It's the people over there, the bureaucrats, telling you what they want. It's time you got out there and talk to your constituents and see what they really want, and then implement those ideas for the city of Pasco. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Dockstetter. Anybody else for public comment? Anybody else for public comment going twice? 3 times. We will close public comment for the evening. Thank you for all who spoke up. Moving on, number 7, reports from committees and or officers. Mayor Pro Tem Milne?
Thank you, Mayor. I did attend the Ag Hall of Fame with my wife and had a good time. And on a side note, I thought them recognizing the Harris family for their contributions as being pioneers in our community, I thought was a nice touch. And so they were awarded the Pioneer Award. And again, it was a good time. And hopefully more of the council members in the future years will be able to attend the Ag Hall of Fame and see about how the ag industry has really pushed Pasco along. And again, that's all.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. Anybody else? I had a busy Thursday. I went to the Franklin County Emergency Management Board meeting where we kind of did our year in review, and then the Ben Franklin Transit meeting was later on that evening at 6 o'clock, and then Friday morning was our monthly Ben Franklin Council of Governments meeting. Unfortunately, that one I had to be mobile because my wife's family had a memorial service in Walla Walla, so I wasn't able to quite interact with that as much as I usually do, but that was it. Moving on. A, hearings and council action or ordinances and resolutions relating thereto, none listed. Number 9, ordinances and resolutions not relating to hearings. This is letter A. This is a quasi-judicial matter. Ordinance number 4812, Rocky Hills Management LP, Wilson Estates rezone from RT to R1. And this is Miss Mattson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and good evening, council. I believe our attorney will be reading quasi-judicial proceedings, if I'm not correct. Attorney Paulum?
Actually, it's Daniel Kenny here tonight.
Oh, hi,
City
Daniel.
Attorney.
Sorry about that.
Yeah. We swap back and forth, so no, I appreciate that. Yes, and so I'll take this opportunity to follow up on what you did on the last time. This is a quasi-judicial proceeding to render final decisions on the matter presented. You've had this come before you a couple of times, and so I'll just do a quick reminder that the appearance of fairness doctrine applies here and must be fair in 3 respects: form, substance, and appearance. And so I will identify some potential areas for potential conflict that I'd like the council to please consider prior to commencing deliberations, and consider whether a potential conflict as follows: a demonstrated bias for or against any of the parties, any direct or indirect financial interest in the outcome of the proceeding, which would affect the council members personally, whether there has been a prejudgment of the issues prior to hearing the facts, whether there has been any ex parte contact with anyone other than staff prior to this proceeding, and any other conflict which a council member believes would prevent them from hearing this matter fairly and impartially. And so at this time, I would ask if any council member has any of these concerns or disclosures now, and now would be the time to make them known on the record. Does anybody have any disclosures to make at this time?
Not seeing any.
Okay, and then would ask if there's any members of the public seeking to disqualify a member from participating in these proceedings.
No one coming forward, sir.
Thank you for this opportunity. I have nothing further on my end.
Miss Mattson, if you and Mr. Hebden's nameplates are switched, just for clarification purposes. There you go. What a gentleman.
All right.
Thank you. Please proceed.
Appreciate that. And I just wanted to start out with a point of clarification. At the last meeting, when I did the overview of quasi-judicial proceedings, I referred to a closed record hearing twice in my presentation. And tonight we do not have a closed record hearing scheduled. We have had one of those before, but that was associated with the zoning determination and appeal. And in this case, there hasn't been an appeal that automatically triggers that for council. So I apologize for the confusion. However, it wasn't noticed to the public, so I don't expect anybody here in the audience that was anticipating to speak during the closed public hearing. Looking around, it doesn't look like there is anyone here. So tonight I'll be presenting the ordinance to council, and there are decision points that I'll cover with you that do not include holding a closed record hearing. If the council does choose to hold a closed record hearing on these types of matters, they may do so. We just need to notice it 14 days in advance, but it's not applicable for this situation. I was comparing it to a previous example with an appeal, and this one has not been formally appealed. I'm so happy to answer questions about that later on if you'd like. Tonight before you is an ordinance to approve a request to amend the zoning map from R residential transition to R1 low density residential. And I'll show you a picture of the property in a few slides here. And staff and the hearing examiner have reviewed the application and will recommend approval. And the process is outlined here on the screen. The applicant started with an application submitted in September. There was a public notice that was mailed to the adjacent property owners related to this rezone request, and there was a public hearing held before the hearing examiner on November 12th of last year. The hearing examiner reviewed the application with consistency of the Pasco Municipal Code and also the criteria listed in the comprehensive plan, and took in the public comment provided either written or oral during the public hearing, and has recommended approval outlined in the packet before you tonight. And here is a picture of the site, and this map is showing the comprehensive planning designation for the property. And this is a vacant property, and the current designation in the comprehensive plan is low density residential. And this designation intends for residential development to occur at lower densities in the city. The current residential density of the property is RT residential transition. And that's a zone you'll see placed in the north end of town. When Pasco annexed in larger portions into the city a few years ago, the residential transition zone was essentially a placeholder zone put on these properties until we could further evaluate what the true zoning would be moving forward. So the residential transition zoning allows for one house every 5 acres. So it's a very county-centric type zoning that's a placeholder in the city that allows low density, very low density development while waiting to see what the property will be zoned in the future. So as I mentioned before, the hearing examiner took in the public comments, and there were quite a few public comments in opposition to this, as outlined in the packet, mainly related to just more dense development near these neighborhoods and concerns about traffic and the construction impacts and things of that nature. And the review of all of these matters against the code, the conclusion was still to recommend approval of this, and the zone proposed here is on the screen to R1 zoning, and this is a zone that allows for a variety of different housing types, and this would allow for single-family dwelling units, single-family attached dwelling units, duplexes, triplexes, a variety of different types. So this is a rezone of the property only. There are not currently any development plans for this project site. This would be assigning a zone to it to R1, and then the future development would likely trigger another hearing examiner review and review of the city codes. So we do not know precisely which type of development will move forward, but this would be the zone that would be placed on the property. So tonight, council is being asked to approve the ordinance as proposed. If the council feels that something has been missed, you can remand it back to the hearing examiner or schedule a closed record hearing. Staff is recommending that this be approved and believes that all criteria have been met. And I'm happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Thank you, Ms. Mattson. Appreciate that. And I really appreciate you clarifying the closed hearing too, because even at the beginning of the meeting, I was scrolling, I saw the quasi judicial, but I was kind of looking for it, and that's why I made even those comments in public comment. Councilmember Perales.
Thank you, Mayor. So I know that we're just looking at the rezone, but it's hard not to not think about a part in the staff report that says, it is worth noting that the applicant has submitted a concurrent preliminary plat application proposing approximately 873 single-family detached residential lots. For me, I don't like that in this spot. We've heard about affordability tonight and how the American dream is escaping us, but there are certain areas of our city that we don't need to densify that much. So I kind of even don't like the fact that on the other slide it says low density. I mean, that to the left right there, that's low density to me, but that's, I mean, to me, 873 homes are lost. I mean, that's like medium density. I can't stomach that. I have been watching these Hearing Examiner meetings from afar, and I think we need to start looking at certain areas of our city and maintaining the culture, the character of those neighborhoods. I would say the same thing over in the Riverview area. I think people move there for a reason, and they want to have one house for every 5 acres. I think that's their right, and the individual applicant has the right to do what they want with their property, but at the same time, we need to look out for the residents and their quality of life. So tonight, I'll be a no. Is there anything we can do in that concomitant agreement to persuade them to do lesser homes?
I believe that agreement could be used if necessary. The applicant would need to voluntarily agree to it. I appreciate your comments related to density, council member. But the reality is the state is requiring Pasco to grow by 18,000 units in the next 20 years. Pasco has to comply with this or we will not be eligible for grant funding for Maria's or Director Sarah's infrastructure projects and other city initiatives. So the 18,000 units absolutely has to go in Pasco over the next 20 years. And, we have been directed at the staff level to look at ways to not densify in the Riverview area, which is a very large area of Pasco. And then if we're directed to, this is a whole address block in the city, to go less dense in this area as well, you're effectively squeezing the balloon and, where does density go? So we do have a conversation. I know this is a very important topic to the group and the public. We do have a conversation pinned for, I believe, in March to talk about the land capacity analysis. So currently Pasco is at a 4,000 unit deficit citywide with our current zoning. And if we go lower in Riverview, which that's another future discussion, the Planning Commission held a public hearing on it last month and directed staff to bring a recommendation to council to zone the Riverview area 2 to 3 units, which is an extremely low density. So if you do that, you have to put the density somewhere else. So I fear that I understand what you're saying, and I do understand the concerns of the property owners that live near here. Their character will change, but that's the nature of the Growth Management Act in Washington State. If you live in a city, it will densify. If you live near a city out in the county limits, you should have no expectation that your view will be preserved and that everything will be less dense next to you. It's just not realistic based on state law. And while I, do tend to agree with you on a personal and professional level on property rights and maintaining neighborhood character, that's not the nature of land use law in Washington State. So I wouldn't recommend that we go that approach just because this is a huge area of town. And I think 863 units maybe isn't dense enough. And I'm looking at it from just a numbers perspective. The math just won't work at some point. And we already have a shortage of 4,000 units citywide. And I intend to bring that to the group soon. It will be a tough conversation. But just keep in mind, before we talk about that, where we can put density, and it needs to be dense somewhere in Pasco. And it needs to be multifamily units. And people are going to be upset. And it's not really your decision or my decision. It's the state telling us this. So we are tied a little bit on that topic.
Totally agree with everything you said.
Yep.
I love the staff report. Again, I'm not fighting what the hearing examiner said, what you guys have presented tonight. I'll go on the record. I don't like the Growth Management Act. I mean, we're very unique in that, right? And for Washington State, but I think there's things that maybe we can do to influence legislation, perhaps get away from that, get more local control. So it has nothing to do. I mean, understand where you're coming from, and I look forward to those conversations, especially when we're doing a comprehensive plan update this next year. So yeah, I'm just wanted to get my points out there, and so again, I'll just be voting no, but I do understand the predicament we are in, but I do believe we should try and push back against the state every once in a while, and I think we'll just reconvene that matter at a later date. Thank you.
Yep. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Milne.
Yeah, thank you. And again, I do agree with Mr. Councilman Prowl, some of his statements. I do have a kind of a side note question for you, Ms. Mattson. when you talk about we're negative 4,000 units, is that like even accounting for like some of the townhouses like in the ProMade developments that coming on Road 100 and the old Harris Farm? Is that included in those numbers, or will when those 800 townhouses, will then the number?
That is including those numbers and our pipeline developments. And what I mean by 4,000 units short is that we have 18,000 units required to be spread out throughout the city in the next 20 years. But within those 18,000 units, we need to hit different income brackets. So 10 years ago, when we did the comprehensive plan update, the state said you must grow by 20,000 units, period. And this time around, the state says you need to grow by 18,000 units, but a large portion of those units has to be within the income range of 0 to 30% AMI, which basically means, homeless shelters, permanent supportive housing, apartment units, multifamily units. So if Pasco develops moving forward into all single family uses, we won't meet the targets. And we don't have to actually achieve that. We just have to demonstrate that our zoning allows for it. So what I mean by 4,000 short is that we're missing with our existing zoning, and it's very, less dense in some areas compared to other cities, especially in the Riverview area. If you are to look at our zoning citywide, it shows that we're not demonstrating enough apartment units is really what it is, or townhomes. But we have looked at our existing development and pipeline developments, and that's included in the totals as well. And we are trying to look at ways where there's an obvious way to densify, like Broadmoor, I think is a really good area to up the density just because it's a known factor. I was thinking the north end of town would be a good place. Doesn't sound like everyone agrees with that, but just, that's what we're left with right now. But yes, to answer your question, it is included.
Okay, well, that's depressing.
Just trying, not to be depressing this meeting, but we'll have a good conversation and we'll have some good ideas. So don't be too upset about it. I think our consultants and planning team will have some reasonable alternatives for you.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Figueroa.
Figueroa. We'll get used to it. Don't worry.
Thank you.
Just to kind of echo some of the sentiments, I do agree with some of the statements made by Councilmember Perales. There's a wise saying that says many things are permissible, but not many things are beneficial. And I think that to try to translate that too is just because we can do something, we should at all times. I understand some of the constraints of the Growth Act, but I think that this allows for space to get creative and creative solutions. Is there any possible way to kind of find some sort of compromise with a different zoning code? Because I think that for me, it's always important to have context and everything else. These are people's livelihoods. I'm sure there's people that have been there for a long time. Investments that have been going on, and they probably plan for the free generation. I don't know, to kind of keep that style of life. I think that in the city of Pasco, those of us who have lived here for a long time, we know that different sectors have different styles, and people choose to live in those sectors for those reasons. So I guess that we've been elected, some of us have been elected, some of us have been appointed because we bring different perspectives and unique experiences for the city of Pasco. So that would be my question. Is there any way to kind of meet in between versus just having a R1? Could we find some median in between?
I appreciate your comments. Tonight, the purpose of the ordinance is to review the existing public hearing and record that's been established and approve or deny the proposal. And to deny it, you need to have justification that they do not meet city code. So we have long-range plans that are set up for this area. The comprehensive plan designation does allow for the zoning. In theory, there could be a compromise. If the applicant wanted to do less of zoning, they would have applied for that. So the task tonight for council, although I do understand you disagree with the state level Growth Management Act, and many cities, including Pasco and the previous city I worked for, have pushed back on the state legislation related to middle housing and some of this forced, a catch-all approach to every city in Washington, almost treating all cities like they're Seattle. I don't think that's right, but there hasn't been a city that I've observed that has been successful in pushing back on it without being non-compliant with the Growth Management Act. So I think that's one issue. So that really ties our hand with situations like this. And tonight, It's not necessarily a negotiation at this point. The hearing examiner in our code is outlined, and it says the applicant has provided their complete application. The property owner has followed the existing codes that are in place that are compliant with Pasco's code and the state law. So to recommend that the zone be different, we'd have to find that there's a legal basis why this isn't allowed. So I don't believe that's an option at this point in the stage. If we do want to look at protecting, everyone in the county and everyone in the city, we're going to have to just look at every zone case by case and then build our long range plans around that, but not pull out the rug from applicants, not implying that's what you're trying to do tonight. But it is essentially, moving the goalpost on the applicant and the property owner who's been following the procedure, and we legally can't do that. And I don't know if Attorney Kenny wanted to add anything there, or if you believe I covered that response adequately.
Yeah, just very briefly, a very adequate response, but also the rezone was initiated by the applicant, and so that's what's before council at this time.
Anything further from council?
I just want to make a note. I mean, this council can deny it, and then the applicant would just have to go through an appeal, correct? We don't have to provide a reason right now.
If council denies it, there needs to be a reason for the denial that states something to the nature of this application doesn't meet city code and has been improperly processed, which I do not believe is the case. And Attorney Kenny, please feel free to jump in if I'm incorrect.
Correct. And the code requires entering findings of facts on one of the actions that allowed, and that would be denial. And so there would be need to be findings made in support of the denial as noted.
Thank you. Councilmember Cotta.
Yeah, I have a problem with the Growth Management Act just as much as anybody else. It does appear to me that there isn't, there's some kind of justification to not approve this zoning process because these guys have followed the rules. And if we say that somebody's, can't have this rezoning application or we deny it, then we're essentially, I think we're leaving ourselves liable. I mean, there's nothing that we can do because then we're playing favorites. Then we're saying, well, these guys got the zone over here, but these guys don't over here just because we don't want to do the zoning when they're applying with all the laws and regulations to do it. So if we had any kind of leverage at all to push back against the state government, I am all for it. I just don't think it's here.
Thank you, Councilmember Cotta. Mayor Pro Tem Milne.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. I did want to agree with Councilman Cotta and Morales. I mean, again, it's very frustrating that, again, you could be for these developments. I feel for the neighbors. It's just so frustrating when it seems like the state is taking the vote out of our hands because of state law. So, I mean, it seems like I have no choice but to vote yes. But I just want to make more of a statement than a question. Just it's phenomenally difficult when you believe one way, but it seems like unless you have a valid point, and I'm not a lawyer, but it seems like everything that you've basically put in front of us and the reports that you have to kind of go with this. So I'm just saying this is just one of the most phenomenal, difficult parts of being on councils that you can't represent your districts the way you think that you should be able to represent them because of state law and state dictating what the council should be doing. So it's more of a statement, but I'm just saying it's extremely frustrating, and this is the hard part about being on council, not being able to represent your districts in a better way.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. Put really well. I mean, I agree with everything basically everybody up at the dais has said tonight. I am super, super frustrated. One of the most profound, disappointing things I found getting on council is, we come in, we're motivated, we want to change, we want to do things, and it's walls like this we run into that we find out there's a U.S. Constitution, there's a state constitution, but we just really have a city charter. In a lot of ways, we are just on loan, so to speak, from the state and have to follow some of the dictates of the state. But I wholeheartedly agree with Councilmember Morales that, we need to push back on some of these things sometimes, or we need to, change seats in Olympia where these decisions are made. But we are one of only 4 states 4 states in the entire United States that has a growth management act like this. And it does run into, private property rights and quality of life and so many other issues that, we see in all of the emails from that we received on issues like this. So I am frustrated just as much as everybody else. One question for you, Ms. Madsen, just the site here. I see on the map here, I think it's the one above that it's completely surrounded by low-density residential. This R1 designation that's being sought, that is also low-density residential, correct?
Yes, correct.
And and sorry to cut you off there, ma'am, and it's just a matter of how, the different ends of what that R1 zoning allows, right?
Yes.
Whether on the little end or the more dense end for.
Yes, it allows more flexibility with smaller lot sizes and different uses. That's correct.
Okay, thank you. Anybody have anything else? Yes,
I just want to add again, nothing against all the work that staff members have done and the examiner, and I think that this is really an eye-opening experience in the sense of more collaboration with city planners and making sure that we kind of work together for what's the best of the city. I'm a firm believer that there's always pros and cons to every decision that you make and everything, and I'm sure that some of the people who were trying to, the Washington Growth Management Act, there's some pros to it. We have to acknowledge some of those things, but there's also cons to it, and I think this is one of those situations into that element. But if it comes to just a matter that they check all the box and they did everything that we've asked them to do and they did that correctly, then, absolutely, I think it goes back to they did everything they were supposed to do. So to no fault of that, we're just kind of expressing some of the sentiments as people who have, residents that we have to still go back to tomorrow and look at in the face. And these are our neighbors and people that, we do life with in the city. So we're expressing those concerns and those voices and opinions. But at the end of the day, we do have to take a voting decision of whether, the policies and procedures that we already have in place. And it seems that, they've checked all the boxes. So not much we can do here in this element. So
thank you, council member. Okay, if no one has anything further, Mr. Perales, I would entertain a motion.
I think someone else should do that.
I thought you wanted to do them tonight.
I'll do it, but I mean,
Go ahead.
I'd be moving to say no.
Go ahead. Yeah, you don't have to vote for it.
You don't vote for it? Oh, okay. I make a motion to not adopt ordinance 4812, amending the zoning classification of certain real property located north of Burns Road, west of Broadmoor Boulevard, south of future Dent Road, and east of future Dent/Fraser Road in Pasco, Franklin County, Washington, from RT residential transition to R1 low-density residential, and further authorized publication by summary only. Again, I said.
We have a motion on the floor
not.
to not adopt. Clearly heard ordinance number 4812. Is there a second? Hearing no second, the motion fails. Mr. Perales, would you like to make another motion?
I make a motion to adopt ordinance number 4812, amending the zoning classification of certain real property located north of Burns Road, west of Broadmoor Boulevard, south of future Dent Road, and east of future Dent/Fraser Road in Pasco, Franklin County, Washington, from RT residential transition to R1 low-density residential, and further authorized publication by summary only.
We have a motion on the floor by Councilmember Perales. Do we have a second?
second.
Second by Councilmember Figueroa. To adopt ordinance number 4812. All in favor, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
No.
No. The vote is 6-1. The motion carries. Thank you, everyone. Moving on, letter B, resolution number 4701-2026 to 2027, City Council representation on local regional boards and committees. Is this the last one? Ms. Barham? Thank you. Surprise.
Yeah, I have work to do. Yes, this is the last one, and I think you met with me last week, and we filled in all the spots. So I guess this is your opportunity to make any changes at this point for your assignments.
Did everybody have a chance to look at it? Thank you, Ms. Barham. I know I talked to you all at some point and either just kind of gave you a yay or a nay or just a little tweak or two. Does anybody have any comments on the issue? Nope. Mr. Perales, would you make a motion?
Yes, I move to approve resolution number 4701, confirming mayoral assignments of council members to various community boards and committees for the years 2026 to 2027.
There's a motion on the floor by Councilmember Perales for resolution 4701.
I'll second that.
Seconded by Mayor Pro Tem Milne. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Motion carries unanimously. Number 10, unfinished business. Ordinance number 4804, adjustment to utility rate and connection fee, water and sewer. Ms. Sigdell is not here.
Ms. Sarah will fill in for Richa, and I will help as needed.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Stewart. Ms. Sarah, you're up.
Good evening, Mayor and Council members. So this item relates to water and sewer rates and connection fees. There is a presentation that is just an overview of the things we have discussed in several occasions. So I will be brief with the explanation. I'm happy to go back and revisit some of those. I will try to focus on the new information. Okay, so the proposed increases are for rates in the water utility for the first 3 years, 20.75% each year, and then a fourth year at 9.5%. And for sewer is for all 4 years of the rate setting 8%. And this is just a graph that indicates where Pasco is currently located in rates compared to other cities in Washington State, including our neighboring cities, and where we would be. I would clarify that the proposed rate increase is consistent with the scenario 1 that had been previously identified in the presentations we did over the end of last year and previously in outreach meetings earlier this month. For sewer, similarly, there is the increase, and again, we're just moving slightly, but without changing locations or placement within our other cities comparables. For connection fees, the proposed is the increase in the maximum calculated, which is for single-family residents and 3/4 inch metering water, $6,148 connection fee, and then for sewer is $4,583. I would say this connection fees, while higher, significantly higher, they are also more predictable because the ordinance as presented eliminates all calculation of frontage fee and square footage fee, which were two multipliers that were used, and the calculation of how much it would cost to connect depended on the size and shape of your parcel, which in this case would be based on the anticipated use, right? Based on the meter size, or based on, for single family, it's just per home. If it's non-residential, it varies with the amount of usage or the flow, depending on the meter that they are having for water. All right, so I will not read this slide for you, but I will do an overview. When we talk about a revenue requirement analysis, or what is typically called a rate study, we are looking to maintain the solvency of our utilities and the ability of that utility to meet our fiscal responsibilities, our commitments, both in providing service and also to meet debt service needs, right? So as part of this study, we identify where we allocate the cost for things based on the cost drivers. So when it comes to rates, we're really looking at operations and maintenance costs, replacement costs, that debt service payment, and reserves for the utility. Now, if we move on to the connection fee is driven by expansion costs, that cost to serve, that buying cost into infrastructure that is already in the ground, that the new user will be using at whatever value that new infrastructure has at the time they're connecting, the remaining value. And the ability to upsize so that we have the right system installed at the time new people are connecting. Okay. So really, if I go back here to connection fee, you really want to focus on that expansion is the enhancement of capacity in the system in order to be able to connect new users and serve those new users. All right, so the calculation for connection fees is a brief summary. We look at existing cost basis, so what is currently in the ground at which value, and what capacity is remaining that the new user will buy in to use. And then what are the new needs, what expansion needs are there in order to be able to serve that new user. So that's the overall calculation, and we've seen it in much more detail with all the numbers, with which projects included, which we will go into next. So overall, the connection fee comparison chart, connection charge comparison charts are shown both for water and sewer, and then combine Pasco with the proposed new connection fees would be somewhere in the middle of the second graph, and you can see it highlighted in yellow in the edges. All right, so quick overview of the systems. We talked about this several times. This is our water system. We have 2 water treatment plants, one really old that needs full replacement, a newer one that needs to be expanded in order to serve new users. Storage, reservoirs, pressure zones, lots of mains, booster stations, other things. All right. Overall, I think this graph was pretty telling in our outreach events, where we show how much we rely on the Butterfield Water Treatment Plant to serve our current demands, and that is what is shown in blue in the screen. And then in green, you can see where the West Pasco Water Treatment Plant, a much smaller and newer water treatment plant, helps supplement that supply so that we can meet demands at peak times. All right, if we move on to sewer system, again, our sewer system is shown in the screen, in green in this case. We have one wastewater treatment plant, a single one. It has been somewhat expanded. It needs some more expansion. Also some replacement. It's an older facility. Lots of gravity mains, some pressurized lines that connect to those lift stations that allow us to serve areas that are in low spots. Along with the sewer assumptions, because I mentioned Butterfield and water, I felt like I needed to mention something in sewer. This rate study accommodates some increase in staffing to get us closer to compliance with our requirements for adequate service based on industry standards, both at the state and nationally. We're currently understaffed, which presents a risk for adequate service. Okay, and so now we move on to the capital improvements that were planned for both water and sewer, and they're represented in our rate study. Water system, you're seeing in this case one of the scenarios, the one that coincides with the rate that is being proposed, that is Butterfield being in an expedited schedule, so that forces other projects to be moved out of this timeline, which is that square that you're seeing there. And so if we focus on which projects relate to which charge or rate, everything replacement is related to rate. So mostly for water, we're talking about Butterfield. It's a really expensive project, so that's the driver for the rate increase. And then there's various water line replacements, either because the material is failing or for those pipes, or there are issues with them at their joints or valves or other things. And then on the capacity enhancing projects, those are the ones related to connection fees. We are seeing a West Pasco water treatment plant expansion, where we could gain another 6 million gallons a day of capacity. Storage reservoir in zone 2, which is really triggered. At this time, we do have a deficiency in our system for storage, but we are only having the trigger for a reservoir when new development comes to that zone. At this time, with the new construction of the Zone 3 tank, we're able to serve Zone 2. Should development occur in Zone 2, we would need to have a tank there to be able to serve them adequately. The development upsize program is part of the connection fee cost, and various waterline extensions, something like Road 103 extension, for example. Okay, so now if we move on to sewer, similarly, we have a series of projects, and then there are some in darker color here, just replacement in kind projects that are identified, likely to not be a full capital project, more on they're expensive replacements in kind, so they're shown here. All right, so if we do an overview of which are the key projects that are related to rates, we are thinking about the 9th and Washington lift station. This is one of the key lift stations that serve 90% of the flow currently for sewer. And this lift station has been used for many, many years and is starting to show signs of wear and tear, and we need to do some improvements in order to maintain operations there. This is an absolutely critical lift station for our system. Then the River Shore trunk main upsize. This is a project where we're replacing aging infrastructure, and when we're replacing it, we are increasing the size. So we're only allocating a portion of that cost to the rates. Another portion will go to the connection fee. So you'll see it shown in both tables in the screen. Then the wastewater treatment plant expansion. Again, we are expanding, but at the same time, we're replacing aging infrastructure. So since we're touching this plant, we're doing both, replacing and expanding. So this one is also allocated a certain percentage, 50% for rates, 50% considered for connection fees. And finally, replacements in kind for specific components such as flare systems for gases generated within our wastewater treatment plant. Those are replacement in kind. It's full replacement, belongs fully in the rate category. So if I go to the connection fee, we already talked about the River Shore trunk maintenance upsize, the wastewater treatment plant improvements that's partially assigned there. And then there are various new lift stations in the list of projects, some of those located in the Riverview area. Should those be consistent with planning decisions? And then the development upsize program, again, where developers are building infrastructure. We want to ensure the infrastructure is the right size of pipe, the right size of facility, and therefore, instead of burdening the developer with paying for those costs, the developer pays the amount that basically builds the infrastructure at the right size, and the city reimburses them for the delta in the cost between what they would have needed versus what is being required of them to install. Okay, so bringing back some of the analysis on capacity remaining in the system. This was discussed during our outreach meetings. It had not been presented in previous council meetings, so we're bringing it forward tonight. For water specifically, we have identified approximately 7,200 equivalent residential units. That is if we were to divide how much a typical house in Pasco uses for water, we would be able, with the capacity we have remaining, be able to still serve with no new improvements, 7,200 new houses. Anything beyond that would require more infrastructure to be built. So, as you know, this rate study evaluates the need for 21,000 ERUs. All right. Moving on to sewer. We had identified remaining capacity in the different components of the system. In this case, the most constrictive one is the collection system, should the development be west of the railroad tracks, and that is 3,500 ERUs. If it's not there, the other limits are in the order of 5,000 to 7,000 ERUs left in the system. All right. Now moving on to the outreach performed and the opportunities we've had to discuss this in open sessions. October 6th was the first meeting in which we discussed the rate study and presented the findings of our analysis. That presentation was performed by staff and FCS or Bauman Group. Brooke Tasha was the staff representing that item from the consultants team. In November 10th, we brought this item back with some discussion on potential alternatives for connection fees and rates associated with them. So trying to balance both of those with some alternatives. On November 17, we brought the item back to a regular meeting with two ordinances, one that had the max connection fee and the associated rates, and then an ordinance B that included half the connection fee and increased rates to make up for the difference. So overall, the overall revenue and the utility would be maintained to meet the needs of the utility. At that meeting, the item was put on hold and to return on January 20th, that is today. And staff was also directed to do outreach to both the development community and the community at large. And those two meetings occurred on January 7th and January 12th, respectively. And we have collected feedback, and I'll move on to showing what the feedback is. And so today we are here at January 20th, where this item was scheduled to come back. Okay. So during the outreach to our development community, we heard requests for seeking funding from alternative sources, maybe finding support from state and federal agencies, maybe considering using other funds like general fund to support the utility and alleviate the burden. We also heard a request to phase in connections. We heard that tonight as well. Phase in the connection fee over a period of time. I believe we heard 4 to 5 years, and was an example provided during that outreach meeting. We also heard a request on considering a sunset to those connection fees, maybe once development projections are lowering. Request to grandfather preliminary plats. I think we heard that tonight as well. We heard concern on the impact to the development community and to the plans that have already been established for specific parcels with the change in rates. What is the impact to that business plan? And concern for the affordability of homes. So it is an overview of what we've heard. We also heard questions on how does Pasco compare overall on fees to other cities and specifically our neighboring cities. So you've seen this slide before. City of Pasco fits somewhere in between Richland and West Richland as far as overall development cost. Kennewick is more affordable. Okay. As far as media outreach, we had good engagement online. We have a website that is dedicated to the adjustment of rates, specifically where there's a lot of information, videos from previous meetings, generally asked questions, the rate model, all kinds of information. The slide with the different fees, comparisons, you name it. There's plenty of information in that website. There's been lots of visits to it. There was also a lot of engagement in our social media and LinkedIn. And then there were interviews by 2 different stations here locally, and a few views, like dozen views on YouTube videos for what was happening with the outreach and some of the explanations of how those rates and connection fees calculations function. Okay, so circling back to the proposed ordinance, and this is a summary. The proposed ordinance as it stands in your packet proposes the increases that you can see in the screen. There are increases established between 2026 and 2029 for rates, and then the connection fees are proposed to be implemented at their maximum dollar amount, but the effective dates for the implementation of those are different. So for the rates, the implementation date could be March 1st of 2026 as written in the ordinance, and the connection fees would be a delayed implementation to January 1st, 2027. The packet you have in the agenda tonight also provides for alternatives to the recommended action, and that is reject this ordinance as proposed and maybe direct staff to reevaluate, give guidance on what you would like to see. I do have to explain the constraint with that. The next item in the agenda is the acceptance of the low interest loan from DOH for the rebuilding of a portion of Butterfield, and that those dollars are at risk, unfortunately, at this time, since the 60-day period for entering that agreement has passed. So should rates were not to be approved tonight, those dollars are certainly in jeopardy. Alternatively, council may decide to make a new motion and divide the issues between connection fees and rates, in which case they would take action in one and maybe delay the other. And that those are certainly some other options. I want to allow City Manager Stewart, if he wants to add anything that I may have missed in this.
Yeah, if I may, Mr. Council, Mr. Mayor. Just a few things, again, listening through the input sessions, I do understand some of the points that the developers are making with regards to the sudden change. A lot of their calculations and numbers and those types of things are kind of set in stone. They don't have the flexibility to go back and change that. So that's why I've asked staff to prepare the ordinance tonight with the delay of the effective date to January 1, 2027. I've visited with Ms. Mattson. We're confident that staff will be able to process any type of applications here by the time of the end of this year, that if developers want to try and process and get approval for their connections before the end of this year and get those approved with today's permit fees, connection fees, that we would be able to do that through December of this year. And that, in effect, does provide the phase-in that's been requested by the developers, but it does draw a line in the sand. We got to be careful here because with the rate study and some of the numbers that we talked about, if you phase that in over a longer period of time, it changes the calculations and the assumptions that then staff would recommend it has to go back and be redone and recalculated. I guess my big concerns here are, if you go back to the capacity slide, either one of those will work. So by my calculation, you're using 28 million gallons per day, and we have available capacity of 34. So you're at 82% capacity. Now, these are mechanical systems. So these aren't systems that you want to run at 100%. Think about running your car with your accelerator floored all the time. Assuming that you could run at that speed for an extended period of time without running into other vehicles and those kinds of things. But at the end of the day, your engine or your transmission isn't designed to run at 100% capacity all of the time. So it isn't advisable to run these mechanical systems at 100% capacity. The other concern I have here, and we just spent a lot of time talking about our disagreement with the Growth Act, but we're required to grow by 18,000 units over the next 10 years. You don't have the water or sewer capacity to even meet that at this point, right? And so, and I assume the developers in the room want to be able to keep building. And if we don't have the capacity, the building will come to a halt. These numbers are also assuming that we don't get an industrial user that comes in and uses a significant amount of water, and then we don't have the capacity to build 7,200 homes. Because if that water gets used for commercial or industrial, that number goes down and is no longer available. So we want to keep growing. In order to do that, we have to have infrastructure. It reminds me a little bit of when I was a lot younger and had hair and we had a growing family. I remember my wife and I came to a juncture where we had 3 kids and we were pregnant with the 4th, and we had a 5-seater car. I no longer had the seats in my car to transport 4 kids safely in a seatbelt, let alone have the room that we needed to maneuver around while traveling and those other kinds of things. In addition, I think we were renting probably a 2-bedroom apartment or a house at the time. We could make that work with 3 kids, but it was going to be harder with 4 and a newborn baby. The point being is, as you grow, you have different things that you have to address in order to provide a certain quality of life, or at least meet the minimum standard. And we're kind of running into that. Mrs. Sarah showed a slide earlier with regards to additional staff we have to add. We're growing to a point that the state in their enforcement and monitoring of us has now moved us into a different tier of compliance, which comes with cost. So as much as I'm sympathetic to the concerns and the financial impacts that it has not only on the developers but on our citizens on a day-to-day basis, we simply have costs in here that to some degree are out of our control that we have to meet. And we have to continue to build and invest in infrastructure to go forward with that. In order to do that, you have to have the revenue coming in sustainably to meet those expenses. And I'll make this point again too, and that is, this is set up as an enterprise fund. Our water and sewer rates aren't supported by property tax. We're required by state law that our water pays for water and sewer pays for sewer. So if we're going to add infrastructure, that has to be built into rates. We have tried to balance this so that it isn't all on new growth and developers going forward. But at the same time, and to be honest with you, I'm surprised we haven't got more feedback from citizens, particularly those on fixed incomes, with these significant increases. The water and sewer rate increases are phased in. We need a 60% increase in water. That's phased in over a 3-year period. We need, about a 24% increase in sewer rates? That's phased in with an 8% increase each year. Those are steep. And some of this, as I've made at some of the public input sessions and made the point there, some of this is because the city of Pasco has done what it could to hold these costs for as long as we can. But we're at a point from both a capacity and an aging infrastructure point that we can't continue to do that unless we want growth to stop. We could do that. Council could choose not to approve the connection fees, and you have one of two alternatives. You can recalculate those back into water and sewer rates completely and raise even higher your 60% water rate increase to higher than 60%. Or we can begin issuing moratoriums on construction. And the first one I would start with would be with industry. Because we have a mandate to grow by a certain number of households, and we can't afford to obligate our water to industry because we need it for housing. And that'll buy you about 3 years. And then you won't have any infrastructure capacity. And the other thing I would remind the council and the public is that it takes us time to design and build infrastructure. I can't go down to Lowe's today and go buy a new lift station and go have it installed by next week. There's processes we have to go through as far as design and approval and all those other kinds of things. It takes 2 to 3 years to build this infrastructure. So if your capacity is going to be at capacity in 3 years, you need to start building now if you're going to have that available in 3 years to continue to add on to. So while I don't like necessarily the situation that we're at, we need to focus on our future and be willing to invest in our future if that's what we want to do. So I guess that would be my points. Again, we've tried to provide as much flexibility as we can. I think I'm comfortable with my recommendation that the effective date of the connection fees be a year. You're basically given 11 months notice to the developers and calculate that into their projects that they're working on now before those numbers get solidified. And staff is committed to processing those permits and those kinds of things to try to make sure that we can get as many of those permits pulled before the end of this year under the current connection fee. I guess the final point I would make here is there seems to be an expectation of the city holding the line on this for affordability. And if this is the direction the council wants to go, then I would ask that the developers hold their line as well. You should hold your house price, sale prices for the next 5 years while we hold connection fees. And that's going to be difficult to do because the material costs go up. You can't guarantee what it's going to cost for wood or steel or anything else over the next 5 years. The city's in the same position. I can't control what the costs of operating a water and sewer plant are for the next 5 years. These assumptions are built off of what we know today and what we're seeing in the trends. These can go up or they can go down. There is some variance, but right now, Pasco is hitting the trends. Pasco is growing at the rate that the Department of Commerce is telling us that we're projected to grow. And until that slows down, we can have that conversation when and if it slows down. If it plateaus out, then yeah, maybe we don't need to build as much infrastructure. But right now, the trends show that we're growing at that rate, and we're going to need the infrastructure in order to be able to continue to grow as projected. So those are my comments at this point. I'd stand for any questions the council may have.
All right, Councilmember Cotto.
I mean, I'm listening. I been doing a lot of scribbling tonight, I think maybe the question it boils down to, is there any way to phase in connection rates to a greater standard without compromising the timing of the water or receiving the low interest loan or being able to make the payment on the low interest loan?
I do want to clarify, the low interest loan revenues are tied to your water and sewer rates. Connection fees are not helping pay for the low interest loan from the state.
Okay.
So if the council wants to talk more about connection fees, that was the recommendation that Ms. Sarah had on one of the final slides of separate the two issues, approve the water sewer rates, and we can give you a little bit more time when it comes to connection fees. But again, I'm telling you, the more you potentially delay that, the more those revenues aren't coming in, and we may have to come back and raise water and sewer rates on everybody. Ms. Sarah, do you want to talk a little bit about the intention of the water and the connection fee study, and that the connection fee was discussed to be a 3-year phase?
Yes, so when the model was created, it was created with the assumption that rates and connection fees could be adopted together, because overall you look at your utility as all revenue needs, right? And so they balance each other. Where our model had that there was a phasing of the connection fee that allowed for flexibility, and that proved advantageous as there was no action in 2025, and we don't have new connection fees today. So by proposing the 12-month delayed implementation of the full amount, is kind of balancing out the fact that we didn't start early with those, and maybe with a lower version of them early. Once we start delaying implementing connection fees or implementing staggered but later on, some of the assumptions of total revenue coming in based on the numbers projected for growth start becoming not true in the rate study. And so that potentially triggers going back and reevaluating whether the revenue needs are being met by the delay, and then delay plus stagger. Does that make any sense? Well, yeah, okay. I didn't know if I was clear. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Perales.
Thank you, Mayor. So what you're saying is that if we would have implemented the connecting charges in 2025, we could have done them staggered. We could have done a phasing in.
Right, because you would have increased revenue already running for a whole year, and then you could go and do your final adjustment. But this, we're kind of eating that first year of potential additional revenue.
Mm-hmm.
So it starts encroaching on whether you will have enough revenue to actually phase those expansion projects.
Okay. I mean, we're at where we're at, but I did send some recommendations to the council last week. You know, we really just need to start planning better. I think the time for blaming past staff, past council, I guess in my opinion, is over. It's time for fixing. And I really do think we need to adopt a long-term utility rate strategy. So I don't think the 18% is adequate, the 19%. I mean, it probably needs to be more at this point, because we're essentially having a sudden rate shock. And I understand, like City Manager Stewart was saying, well, no, he was wondering why people weren't really upset about the increase in rates. Well, because they're too busy working. They're too busy with their 4 or 5 kids and going to practice. They're not really paying attention to this stuff, but they will pay attention when they see that bill double. I had emails today, hey, vote no, my bill's gonna double. I thought I got an ADU for affordability reasons, but now you're doubling my bill. I really do think we need to look at those rates, and I understand it's a huge shock, but I mean, we gotta do what we gotta do, and we gotta start saving money now. We gotta start creating a reserve. I know there was talks during the development meeting where, a lot of people don't save. Well, we're policy legislators. We need to start thinking for the betterment of our community, and we need to start saving money for this stuff, so we don't have to have these 20% increases every few years. So that was one of my recommendations. Another one, again, was building a reserve. I think we need to do that starting now, rather than just kicking the can down the road for 4 years and having to do another rate study. I believe we should implement half of the connection fees right now. If doing a multi-year phase is not doable, I mean, it's only been a couple months. I mean, I guess, I don't know when we talked about connection or about the rate study, but I want to say it was like, talked about maybe March, April. So I don't understand how, if we didn't do it in 2025, it kind of messes up the numbers, but I guess I'd have to get more information about that. But I don't see an issue with us implementing half the connection charges so that you'd have an increase of some of those rates, and then perhaps do that over a multi-year phasing in. And then also perhaps either grandfathering in or establishing a clear transition policy for the preliminary plats, because people didn't do this in their pro forma. When they're out there developing, they didn't see another $10,000, which really isn't $10,000 more per lot. It's a lot more because they're going to add it to the cost of a home. It's going to compound it with your interest when they get that loan. So it's a lot more than what we're saying here. Those are my recommendations. I think we need to fine tune it, but if we had to do that today, if we had to do anything today, I would approve the rates right now so we can go get that loan. But we're going to probably have to revise it if we, perhaps this council does go with the implementation of half of the connection charges. So those are my recommendations. And I think that's a win-win. And, you know, and then we kind of just, I mean, my biggest thing is we need to have a long-term strategy of putting away reserves so we don't have these sudden rate shocks every few years.
Thank you, Councilmember Perales. Back to you, Councilmember Cotta.
Maybe Harold, you could discuss the criteria. You know, why the 11-month delay? What was the criteria used to come up with the 11-month delay? How does that help us? How does it add more risk? You know, where did you decide to draw the line there?
Councilmember Cotta, in response to that, really the 11 month delay was pulling January 1st of 2027. Typically, I'm used to rates going into effective at the beginning of a year. And so that was the next upcoming year, and it buys 11, 12 months. And it ties back to, in talking with Director Mattson on how long it would take if somebody came in and applied for their water and sewer permits today, how long would it take us to process that to a point that we could approve it and then they could pay their fees? And, you know, I believe the statement was probably 6 months to 12 months, depending on how complicated of a project that was. And so we were confident that that 12 months would give adequate time that people could come and make those applications. Staff could handle processing those within that time period before the new connection fees went into effect. So in essence, it gives developers the opportunity to come in and pull permits at today's connection fees on projects that they're currently working on, but draws a clear line in the sand of when that's going to change. So in essence, we're given 11, 12 months notice of when these fees are going to change. Let's give them the opportunity to calculate that into their pro formas and those kinds of things as they're working on the next projects, but also provides them some time to wrap up and get their applications in now underneath the current fee structure. I do want to go back to some statements by Councilmember Perales, because I do agree with a lot of what you're saying. My advice would be is in the future is don't wait to do small incremental increases in fees to the point that you have to do these big shocking increases right now. It's better to do a 1 to 3% increase a year than to wait and do a big 60% increase every 15 years. And I do agree with setting money aside into reserves for paying for future projects so we can help minimize potentially some of those future needs for increasing rates in the future. But in order to do that, we have to charge more than what we need to spend. And so I agree with it in theory, but in reality it becomes very hard to actually put that into fruition. Because if I need if I need 90 cents to operate, I need to charge a full $1 in order to put 10% aside. My other concern is in one of the slides that Director Sarah provided earlier with regards to the capital improvement project, there is a big square she had highlighted in red where there is no improvements which in essence means that we're potentially deferring maintenance and issues and projects that we need to do because we are trying to keep these rate increases as low as we possibly can. Which means in those years, instead of being proactive, we're going to be reactive. And so if something happens in an emergency, we're going to have to come up with the money to fix it in an emergency situation. But we're not going to be able to avoid those emergency situations because we can't be preventative and proactive in advance because we don't have the money to do it. So, but that goes back to the point that Councilmember Prowse was saying is better management, better reserves, which was what I'm trying to get us to. But first, we have to catch up with the situation that we're currently sitting in.
All right. Thank you. Let me go down to the end here real quick. Councilmember Figueroa.
Yeah, first and foremost, I just want to say thank you to the city staff for all the long devoted hours putting into this and making sure that new council members like myself are caught up to date in this issue. I was fortunate enough to be catching it before being elected, some of the conversations. So thank you. You're not the bureaucrats, as you've been called tonight. You are professionals, and we rely on your expertise. Just like as an educator myself, being a teacher in the classroom, people entrusted me their kids as a professional in that classroom because I've done my due diligence to be able to be there. So I believe that it's important that we don't pity one side over the other, city council versus city staff. It's important for a set of wings and a plane to fly. You know, one is no greater than the other, and I think that both are important to have in order to ensure that we have a successful and smooth ride. So again, thank you for all of that, all the graphs, everything. You've taken me in and really explained it and broken it down to me, and all the questions you were readily available to answer. So I appreciate all that stuff. I wasn't able to make it here in person to the developers meeting, but I did catch it online. And one of the biggest differences that I saw was there was a full house. There was a lot of people because they had interest in that, but not so much when it came to the public residential meeting. And to me, that kind of shows the story of the city of Pasco. One that I really kind of experienced. Like you said, Councilmember Perales, a lot of our residents are hardworking folk. They're working more than just one job. When I looked at this topic, a lot of scenarios came to mind. And what I have in mind is a single parent with a couple of kids working 2 to 3 jobs just to reach ends meet at the end of the month. And when we look at this, it's not going to be easy. We've been elected to make the tough decisions, and I'm ready to make a decision tonight. And combining both the water rate and connection fees, delaying action on any of these items doesn't avoid the cost. At the end of the day, it's just going to make it more costly down the line. And so I believe that we've all done our due diligence when it comes to this. This is going to affect all of us. With the water increase and sewer rates, I'm going to have to get together with my wife and review our monthly budget to see how we're going to have to maybe scrap some of those things. And we're fortunate enough to have a stable job. I think about, a lot of those hardworking folk that are actually the lifeblood of our community, who are small business owners, who are blue-collar workers, who wake up at the crack of dawn and work 12, 16-hour shifts, who are in the warehouses, who aren't able to be here and express their concern. If there's one thing that my mom taught me, being raised in a trailer park, is how to stretch $1 and feed 6 mouths on a single income. And I'm sure that a lot of our folks will have to do that tonight if and when this passes, and it'll be a long conversation. And yes, they'll probably be upset, and because nothing increases aren't something that any of us want. It wasn't our fault. Back previous councils, maybe they didn't want to raise it, but it is our fight to make it right. And so I believe in what is fair and what is just. And so I believe when it comes to monthly rates, those are paying to operate and maintain and improve existing services, as I understood. And the connection charges are meant to ensure that growth pays for growth. And that was one of the biggest things that came at the development meeting. That most of the developers were okay with that. But having to delay the connection fees or maybe only doing half is only going to put more burden on the existing users at the end of the day. And that is not fair. I represent one of the older districts, and I look at the residents of my district that elected me to be here, and that's going to be a big strain. I'm thinking about my neighbor across the street in the apartments, right? Who's gonna have to figure out which meal they're gonna have to cut down to make this payment. And it's not easy. So I hear and share the concern about rising costs. And I want to go for the record and clarify for those of the people that are listening on the live stream, they might catch it tomorrow on social media, all those big headlines. This isn't a tax increase at the end of the day. That would be inaccurate to put. Utilities are nonprofit services, and these fees pay only for operating and maintaining the water and sewer system. And that's really important to go on the record and really share out there. So at the end of the day, all sectors might come together, and we have to be able to share the costs at the end of the day. No one is greater than the other. Developers or builders and all that stuff aren't greater than existing resident users. And so we all have to have this cost at the end of the day because this is where we're at. Time is of the essence, as staff has shared with us. Pasco is the fastest growing city in our region, and it's something to be proud about. We're a standout. People want to come here. They want to live here because it's a great place to be. It's why I feel proud to be representing the city of Pasco. The water sewer system has done its job. It's reached its life cycle, 80 plus years, and it's about time that we reinvest for the future generations to come so that they can enjoy what we've been able to enjoy so far. So I really urge my colleague council members to really consider that and really vote in favor of this. It's not an easy task, but we weren't elected to make the easy decisions. We're here to make the tough decisions at the end of the day. But that's where we're at. And so we can only make it right moving forward. I'm sure there's going to be a lot of conversations, but I really do hope that we're all, I'm in here, I'm in this as well. We're not outside of this. This is going to hit all of us. But this is what we must do for the best interest of the city and the future years to come. So I really do urge my council members to really vote in favor of this, and I'm really going to make a decision tonight on this. So thank you.
Thank you, Councilman Figueroa. Anybody else who hasn't spoke yet? I'm going to chime in here real quick, and then we'll get to you, Councilmember Perales. Man, just I guess, Ms. Mattson, just for clarification, even in the email we got today, connection fees are not paying to replace Butterfield plant, only expansion to the plant or the system, correct? Or, sorry, maybe Director Sarah, sorry.
Yes. Connection fees do not consider Butterfield as part of their basis for the cost calculation. Butterfield is a full replacement. Its infrastructure has been used 80 years. It was built in the 1930s, started operating in the 1940s. 100% of that project is assigned to the rates. So it's 100% replacement and not enhancing capacity for the system.
Okay, thank you. And, you know, I guess I feel like just some of my notes I wrote down earlier today, you know, that, you know, gentlemen, we're stuck trying to make everybody happy, but I don't think in the end, you know, we're going to make anybody happy. I do believe we partner with developers to build the city, and you know, I think our goal here is to find some middle ground or a compromise that allows the city to expand and invest in the system while allowing a reasonable way for those who are in the process of development to be grandfathered in. You know, this is really not an easy one. I agree with you know, a lot that's been said. I agree with Councilmember Perales that I think some long range planning and those kind of things will help benefit. But this is I think this is the kind of change or the kind of increase though that we don't see every few years. This is like a once in a generation, you know, increase. I think Mr. Stewart brought out a good point in one of the developer meetings, that this was probably paid for under FDR and the New Deal way back in the day. I mean, I don't think we've traced those dollars yet back or anything, but you know, the city of Pasco probably couldn't have afforded to do that. And here we are having to replace this 86-year-old plant or close to a century-old, you know, system now, and that is just a big lift. I mean, I wrote down the number here, $250 million. It's what I told my kids even before I left tonight. I'm like, you know, we have to figure out how to replace $250 million plant, and yeah, that goes to the ratepayers. And I agree. I like the idea of, saving for a rainy day. I think we all like that too, but I'll be honest with you. I'm probably of the mindset where I believe the taxpayers themselves deserve to have as much money as possible in their bank account. And as much as we do need to be good stewards of the infrastructure we have or whatever, I believe that that's the taxpayers' money. It should be in their bank account for them to earn interest or them to help make ends meet or whatever. And yeah, this rate increase is going to be a big enough shock that, maybe it is 1% to 2% a year down the road or something like that. But to start banking on top of some kind of massive increase like that, I couldn't do that right now. I don't think our citizens can do that right now. We're already, making a big enough ask here. And so I'm probably in the middle ground there somewhere. I like the idea of grandfathering in those who, have plat approvals already that can pull water and sewer permits by the end of the year. I think a line does need drawn somewhere. Ultimately, you guys, this stuff has to be paid for, and it's just up to us to figure out who's going to pay for it, when it's going to be paid for, and how much, and those kind of things. And I think we do need to seek kind of a compromise, and I think somewhere that line's got to get drawn, and I think it is reasonable to give people about almost a year, 11 and a half months or 11 months and 10 days to pull those water and sewer permits, those who are in the process already to be grandfathered in under the existing rates. So, Councilmember Perales.
Thank you, Mayor. I just want to get a clarification on the staff report. I had a couple emails and phone calls today. It's on page 1 where it says, I don't know if you have the capabilities to put it up on the screen, but it says connection charges, water 6148, sewer 4354, and a lot of people were concerned that they were going to those connection charges were going to increase by 20% and 8%. I told them, no, that's not the case. I just think the staff report just looks a little clunky, but I want to make sure I get that on the record that isn't the case.
Can you repeat that? I will bring to the screen what that table looks like. Just making sure that that's what the table looks like.
Right. So to the right, those are the rates.
Yes.
That's not the connecting charge. So it's not going to go up by 20%, 20%, 20%. Okay.
No.
Right.
26, 27, 28, 29 is rates. And the connection charge, and this is one example of connection charges for a single family, 3/4 inch meter. Those are the connection charges as proposed, but again, with different implementation dates.
Right. Okay, thanks for that clarification. And then just to re-clarify what I said earlier about long-term planning, the 1% to 3%, rate increase would be like in 2030. So it wouldn't be attached to what we're doing now because we have connection charges, we have the rate increases, so we wouldn't have to do that now. It would just be done at a later date. I believe that needs to be part of this plan because a lot of these things we do up here, we talk about it and then individuals just want us to vote on this one thing, and then that little piece that I was talking about right now kind of just gets lost over a couple of years. I really do think we need to do that. I think at this point, I think we should separate the two and just have a timeline of 2 weeks or so. So I'm not trying to put the connection charges off for a year. It's just let's talk about it. Let's get questions, or let's get the answers to some of these questions that we've heard. We've given emails, and I said we just I say we just put a date of maybe the first meeting in February or the second regular meeting. That would be or have a special meeting. I'd be okay with that as well.
Thank you, Councilmember Perales. Councilmember Figueroa.
So what questions do you have, Councilmember Perales, in a sense of would you be okay then to putting this cost on our residents who are already existing users? Because at the end of the day, it has to be paid. And so if you're okay with having to take delayed action for the connection fees, that means that the existing users are going to have to bear that front. And as we've already talked, they're barely surviving. A lot of our folks are barely surviving. So if anything, I would be okay with doing the connection fees already now because that's what's fair. We have to understand that the rates, the water rates, sewer rates are going to go up as proposed in this ordinance March 1st for the residents. Right? Developers have until January 1st of 2027 to go back, replan, go talk to their investors and say, hey, there's new different numbers that we got to, they still get 11 months but our folks who we are here representing don't get that time. So I don't understand where the justification would be for you to be okay with that and not the other. So at the end of the day, like I said, monthly rates pay to operate and maintain what we already have. Connection charges would be to ensure that growth pays for growth and new connections. So that to me is fair. And that's where we're at.
You know, to answer your question, to me, it's not right now. When we have people have interest in developing, we need to make sure that's been a big thing, I guess, for previous councils prior to you guys getting on, is transparency, letting people come give their say. I don't see an issue with doing that because you just said March 1st, 2026, the rates go up. I'm saying have 1 to 2 to 3 weeks figuring this stuff out. I mean, there's a lot of people who have questions that have not been answered. I know there's questions from an individual in the audience that, from what I know, have not been answered. So people have questions about the formulas and all that stuff. It's okay. We can take the time. Like you said, the connection charges can get done in here 2 to 3 weeks, and it's done before the March 1st of 2026 rate increase. But I don't see a problem with separating the two because I have two interests. I have the interests of the residents and also interests of the development community. Development brings jobs. It brings prosperity to our community. So you got to weigh both of those when you make the decisions. For you, it might just be really, really simple. These guys are just fat cat developers. They have the money to do it. But a lot of them don't. I mean, it's very thin margins sometimes. So, maybe perhaps talk to the developer and see how that works. But I mean, there's a lot of stuff that goes into developing. It's their risk, but at the same time, we need to provide an environment where they can develop because we need the housing, we need the taxes, and we just need them so that we continue growing because, like you said, we have these mandates. So I just don't see an issue. But hey, we're 7 people up here. If the council decides not to do that, people will just vote the way that they do. But I still think we just need to get questions answered for the developers and people who are going to be impacted in the development community.
Thank you. And if I can just interject here real quick, I just want to let both of you guys know I really appreciate the discussion. These are huge issues we're undertaking here, big decisions we have to make. Councilmember Cotto, I'll get to you in 1 second. Director Sarah, if I can just ask a follow-up question about Mr. Heyer's question earlier. I'm not sure if you're prepared to answer, but just about the 20 years, I think he said was the time that it seemed, and he didn't use the word inappropriate, but seemed like it was a little far. Is that a time period that's usually used, or is that because he seemed to say the formula, and I think he used the phrase the maths, but that was the one thing he couldn't quite get his head around, or whatever, was that that long of a period or whatever.
So we did look at our CIP on what our comprehensive plans show. Now, when you look at the CIP as shown in the model, really, for example, for water, it doesn't go that far out. We are in the process of generating a new water system plan that is comprehensive to the city and is updated every 10 years. So ours is almost 10 years old, and most of the projects have been accomplished. So there is a series of time that is looked at, right, and which projects are going to happen. But then there is a division by the number of units that are expected to happen. So overall, the cost per unit is really what is being boiled down in the analysis that we're providing. And so that is ultimately somewhat independent of what is your period of time, as long as your 2 periods of times are consistent.
Thank you. Let me ask that a little bit better. Is 20 years, is that usually what's properly done? Because I think the gist of what I got from him was that was maybe a longer period than what's usually used, and maybe Mr. Stewart can chime in.
So my understanding is best practice, whether you're talking about water or sewer, streets, anything, that your capital improvement project list is usually a 20-year period.
Okay. And that, I think his question was just the numbers used for growth. Would that coincide, the numbers that we are basing on growth? Because I think the gist of his argument was, are people, are we paying for growth 20 years from now? And maybe I'm not capturing him right, but that's kind of the way I understood what he was saying.
I guess that's debatable, up for opinion on how far out you go when you build infrastructure in. But typically you try to build in as much capacity as you can. the community of Pasco has been living off of the capacity built in the Butterfield plant for 85 years. Right? So if we're going to build a new plant, we're building a plant that we want to make sure is either going to meet or is expandable to meet the growth of this community for probably the next 75 years.
Okay, thank you. Councilmember Cotta?
Leo's comment about a delay for answering some questions. It doesn't sound like you're proposing any change in ordinance. It's just a time to answer questions. Is that what you're saying?
I actually have a motion I want to make.
Okay. Can you explain a little bit more so I can know about it?
Well, I mean, again, I've gotten emails today, and I know many people on this ties have gotten emails from developers. I mean, we got a letter from an attorney that they have questions about this stuff. So I don't see an issue with waiting 1 to 2, 3 weeks. It's not like we're missing out on some money right now. It's going to go into effect, right? Unless everyone up here says we don't want connection charges. I don't feel that sentiment up here. It feels like we do understand the report. We understand the formulas. Okay, that's us, but there's people who are questioning it, so it's okay to kind of pump the brakes a little bit. But my motion would be to remove the connection charges from tonight's ordinance, and let's get the questions answered from everyone, make sure everyone's on the same page, and maybe perhaps this council wants to do half, maybe they don't want to do any. I just don't, I mean, there's no reason to rush this tonight, but I mean, I feel confident in in my opinion, we're going to have to do the rate increases. I mean, there's really nothing to do about that. So that's my motion would be to remove the connection charges right now and bring it back for another regular meeting or special meeting at a future date prior to March 1st, 2026.
I do agree with what you were saying about representing the developers as well. I mean, obviously we're trying to protect the best interests of everyone. We're trying to prevent rate increases from people who already own homes, who are already paying for current infrastructure and maintenance, from the going up on top of that. But in doing that, it does pull the rug out from the developers because they're coming in here with certain expectations and now they're changing. That's really what we're trying to
Correct.
manage.
What I'm worried, I mean, those policies that they have to abide by, those are our policies. That's what we implement, right?
Yeah.
And so what I'm worried about is development stopping. I mean, I'm sure there's a development or two who are watching this meeting, and if we vote a certain way, okay, never mind, pulling that application
I
out.
agree.
And that's housing we need, right? We need 18,000 homes.
Yeah.
So this is the impact of that, so.
Councilmember Figueroa?
I started picking up garbage in job sites for building homes. And then from there on, I slowly started learning how to use a nail gun and how to use a skill saw until I built my first wall in a home. All the way until the point where I was fortunate enough to be a general contractor, and I've dealt with developers, builders. So all these different things aren't new to me. I've actually reached out to a few developers on this issue and getting their expertise as well and their words. So I've done my due diligence when it comes to this. So I'm not new. And I definitely understand. I go back to the same example. We need developers and builders and realtors just like what we also need our residents. And it's important because at the end of the day, it's going to affect all of us. We can't just assume that one group can take the hit and the other one is okay. As city manager already said, time is of the essence. We got about, with this, 3 years at best. And as in the other meetings, it takes about 4 years to get this project up and running. You're a project manager, have experience with project management. Like we can't push time too much because what if something along the way goes wrong? Then we're in crunch time. And then we're dealing with not being able to provide good cleaning water for our residents. And not being able to have that infrastructure for that growth that we need. We are the fastest city, growing city in the Tri-Cities, along with West Richland, right? These builders, will they take a hit? Sure. The developers, sure. But at the end of the day, we're all taking a hit. Even the residents will be taking a hit on their paycheck. We'll all of us. And studies show that this is the place to build. This is the place where people want to be doing their business. So that's not going to change. It just allows them a little bit more, 11 more months to be able to put that into their calculations. And That's what good builders and developers do. If they don't have the capacity to build, then just don't. You're gonna have to figure it out somewhere else, right? You have to do your due diligence, and I believe that we're giving them more than enough time, 11 months, to be able to do that, versus our residents who by March will have to find a way to make it work. And at the end of the day, I just want to leave it on the record that we are accountable to the residents of the city of Pasco. They are the ones who have put us here in these positions. This isn't about stopping growth. I'm not about stopping growth, but it isn't just growth at any cost. It is about equity, sustainability, and responsible planning. So 2 weeks, I don't know if we can afford 2 weeks. Maybe the city staff can say this is the last day that we can hold off, but at the end of the day, we do have to make a decision. And that's what we're here for. It's not an easy thing. There's a Spanish saying, no somos monedita de oro para caerle bien a todos. We are not a golden token to be liked by everybody. In this decision, some people aren't going to like it. And that's what we've been entrusted to do, to be good stewards at the end of the day of the city's resources, and to plan with good infrastructure for the future, for our kids, for future generations to enjoy the beauty of what the city is and what it has to offer.
Thank you. Mr. Stewart, your light's on, did you have something to add?
Yeah, just a couple of points real quick, and I've appreciated the conversation, and you are having a difficult conversation. This is a difficult decision to make, and I understand that. Just a couple of key points. One is a reminder, staff is proposing that the connection fee not go into effect until January 1 of 2027. That was an attempt to try and help alleviate some of these concerns and these pressures. Now, you may feel that's not enough. That's fine. We can talk about that. The other thing is there were some references to a letter from an attorney. Yes, we've received it. Council has been provided that even prior to what was provided to you this evening at the dais. Staff is prepared if you would like to go in executive session. The city attorney is prepared to talk about that letter. I don't think it's advisable to talk about proposed legal action against the city in open session. So if you would like to go into closed session and talk about that, we can. But again, staff has tried to recommend an approach that we feel moves the community and the organization forward in a meaningful way that also accounts for the concerns that the developers have proposed or expressed to this point, which is why the current ordinance does not make an effective date of those connection fees until January 1 of 2027.
Thank you. Ms. Mattson, a flurry of applications. How does your office feel about that?
Our office can handle it. It's pretty typical that cities raise rates each year. There's some impact fees that go up every year. And, the last two cities I was at, it wasn't uncommon for the fees to increase, rather the review fees each year. So I believe we will be okay. I think that gives plenty of time for applicants to prepare their permits if they're mid-cycle. And City Manager Stewart did mention before 6 to 12 months would be enough for a project. And I just wanted to clarify that's for projects that are already in motion. If someone were to come in tomorrow with a pre-application and want to start the process from start to finish, they're not going to do that in 6 to 12 months unless they're just meeting all of the standards. This is for people with preliminary plats that are already approved, which means they should be moving through the next steps, the civil plan review process. And I think 6 to 12 months is very reasonable for an applicant to move through. But I think if the applications come near the end, we'll prioritize any that are due for a fee increase and make sure we get those through first, and just have other people wait, because if it's not impacting them, I think we can get those through. But it should be fine. I would imagine everyone won't wait until the last minute, and if they do, it's just really not uncommon. And I think administratively we could probably work something out if needed. I've done that at prior cities too, where if we get 500 applications, like 2 weeks before the deadline, and we're expected to review those quickly, I think we can look at it with the city attorney and see what's reasonable and fair in that situation.
Okay, appreciate that, Ms. Mattson. With no more lights off, Mr. Perales, you're our motion maker for the evening.
I already made a motion earlier.
Oh, well, okay. I thought you were just talking about it. I guess I didn't realize we had actually made a motion. Would you restate your motion then?
I make a motion to separate the connection charges in the ordinance, and we would reconvene at either regular meeting or special meeting to implement those.
Motion on the floor by Mr. Perales to separate the two, the utility rates and the connection charge. and for the connection charge to be looked at a later meeting. Is that correct?
Correct, and then a friendly amendment and just kind of go over those other things about perhaps grandfathering and maybe just looking at what that would look like. I know we talked about January 1, 2027, but also probably looking into grandfathering preliminary plats.
So just to clarify your motion, so we should need to be a little, I hear Eric in my mind, we want to be a little more specific for that. You're saying just grandfathering all preliminary plats, and is that your motion?
Correct.
Okay. Motion on the floor to grandfather in all preliminary plats under the old rate and to separate the two issues, the connection charge to be discussed at a further meeting.
Is that allowed, or could that, or do we need to reword that motion?
He made a motion. Somebody needs to make a second for it to move to discussion. If there is no second, the motion dies. Okay, with no second, we'll consider that motion dead. Would you like to make another motion, Mr. Perales?
Sure. Let me pull up the staff report.
Or I have it up. Could I just make the motion here?
Give Mr. Perales the opportunity, unless he wants to relinquish to you, I would be fine with that.
I think I copied it though. See here real quick. Sorry about that.
And technically, I guess any council member can make a motion anytime, but it would be probably the right thing to let him try to finish at this point. Thank you.
I make a motion to adopt ordinance number 4805, amending and repealing sections of Pasco Municipal Code in Chapter 3.35, fee summary, and amending and repealing sections in Title 13, water and sewers, to adjust rates and connection fees for city water and sewer utilities, and further authorize publication by summary only.
Yeah, that's just one correction, Councilmember Perales. You said 4805. It is actually 4804. So Mr. Perales has put a motion on the floor, made a motion for ordinance number 4804 to adjust the utility rate and connection fee.
Second.
Second by Councilmember Figueroa. Discussion.
I guess my only issue is that, we're really not going to discuss even doing half the rate or anything. We don't want to discuss that at all.
I mean, we can discuss it, but we have a motion on the floor to approve the ordinance or not.
Okay, yeah, it's just discussion.
No, that's fair. Yep.
Nope. Thank you, guys.
Ms. Clerk, let's do a roll call vote, please.
Councilmember Okada,
Yes.
Councilmember Figueroa,
Yes.
Councilmember Hernandez,
Yes.
Councilmember Perales,
No.
Councilmember Campos,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Milne,
No.
and Mayor Grimm.
Yes.
Okay. 5-2, it carries.
Thank you. Let's move on to letter B, resolution number 4681, authorization of $14.727 million DWS RF loan contract DWL 31572-0. And this is back to Director Sarah.
Good evening again, Mayor and Council members. So this item has already been discussed in November. It is for the awarded amount of $14.7 million that will help initiate some of the improvements at the Butterfield facility, including improvements to the raw water intake facility at that facility, so in the river, and some power improvements in order to be able to then source that power to the new facility. This specific award has a 35% forgivable loan, which works effectively as a grant. So there's $5 million, a little bit more than that, that is a grant, and then the repayment portion is $9 and a little bit million. Those that are repayable are at 1.75% interest rate. and this award is past the 60-day acceptance. We have discussed with DOH staff whether they would provide an extension, and they said they would hold until today, which was the date that we had announced we would have a definition on rates. So now that rates have been discussed and there's been action on it, we are able to repay this loan with this new rate structure. And so we are in good shape to accept the loan should you want to do so. Thank you.
Okay. Any council members have a question or anything you want to discuss as far as this item? Seeing no lights, Mr. Perales, if you'd be so kind as to make a motion.
I make a motion to approve resolution number 4681, approving and authorizing the execution of a $14.727 million drinking water state revolving fund loan contract number DWL 31572-0 with the Washington State Department of Health for the Butterfield Water Treatment Plant, raw water pump station, and electrical improvements project.
Motion on the floor by Councilmember Perales to approve number 4681. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Councilmember Figueroa. All in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Letter C, approve Tri-City Regional Hotel Motel Commission Tourism Promotional Area 2026 Budget and Marketing Plan. And Mr. Stewart, your name is there.
Yes, latter part of last year, you had a presentation, and you did approve a couple of the pieces, and we received the budget and are requesting the council to approve the budget and marketing plan as was presented earlier.
All righty. Anybody have any questions? Comments? All right, Mr. Perales, if you would give us a motion, sir.
I make a motion to approve the Tri-City Regional Motel Commission 2026 Budget and Marketing Plan.
We have a motion on the floor by Councilmember Perales to approve the Tri-City Regional Motel Commission plan. Is there a second?
I'll second that.
Seconded by Mayor Pro Tem Milne. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion carries. 11, new business, none listed. Number 12, miscellaneous discussion. Mr. Stewart, would you like to kick us off, sir?
Yes, first and foremost, as always, there is the city manager's report included in there. Be happy to answer any questions that you have at this time with regards to anything that's covered there. Not hearing any. I do not have any further updates other than the fact to just express my gratitude to Debbie for her service. I've only got to work with her for a few months, but that has been an enjoyable few months working with her. And hate to say goodbye this week, but council is invited to, we're doing a retirement send-off on Friday at 1 o'clock here at the council at City Hall. So if council would like to come and say one final goodbye, you're welcome to do that. The only other thing I would say is this week we're hot and heavy into state legislative issues. There's a few of us headed out to Olympia tomorrow, myself included. And given the conversation tonight about the Growth Act and all these other kinds of things, this is a great opportunity to go and express those opinions on behalf of the community of Pasco and help them understand why these decisions from the state legislature have major impacts at the local level. And we look forward to helping relay that message this week.
Thank you. Anybody have any questions for Mr. Stewart or any other comments you want to make? Councilmember Perales?
Thank you, Mayor. I have two things for miscellaneous. I'm sure a lot of individuals have seen the news of that level 3 sex offender home over in Kennewick. It was standing room only today at the Kennewick City Council meeting. I would like to see if we could get a brief on what role the city of Pasco has in that development. What notifications need to go out, with law enforcement, DSHS, the schools. I just think we need to get out ahead of it. I'm not against people getting help, but I think that's a serious development that happened in Kennewick, and it's only a matter of time before we see it here, and then our chambers is going to be full with people. Like, why didn't you get out in front of that? So I think maybe just something with education, and perhaps there's something we can do right now by the legislative session just convened. So we reach out to our state senators and representatives to figure out how we can not have these things in certain areas of our city. So it looks like you want to say something.
A great concern. This is something that we're watching, and it sounds like we keep repeating this and kind of blaming somebody else, which is not usually how I want to handle these types of topics. But to your point, these are things that, again, the state legislature is making changes and making these things, whether it's increasing the density that can be built on a single family residential lot that we don't necessarily want to allow. Another one is these types of facilities. And actually there is some legislation some proposed bills this year that could actually make this situation worse, that Ms. Mattson and I have been, and staff have been working on, speaking in opposition of, that would basically make zoning obsolete, that these types of uses can be built in residential, commercial, wherever they want to in our communities, and there's nothing we can do to stop it. My observation is Kennewick is following state law. There is no alternatives for their community at this point to do notifications or stop it or anything, because state law has overridden local law that makes it allowable. We continue to speak out in opposition and express concerns on this. I will be working with staff to look and working with the city attorney to see if there are some alternatives that we can put into place that maybe provide some mechanisms for that. But what I'm hearing in my conversations with my fellow city managers, that those alternatives may be few and far between. But we are trying to think outside the box. We're trying to find a loophole. We can find a way through it. If we can identify, I've done some research myself to see some things that maybe we can do or require that I'll discuss with staff and the city attorney. But yes, we can prepare a briefing in the near future to talk about these issues. We can talk about the state laws that are in place that allow these types of uses within our communities and really restrict or eliminate our ability, erodes our local control over these decisions and processes. So a very valuable conversation to have. And we will have that in the near future.
I appreciate that. And you're right. I mean, it comes down to just state legislation overriding us and taking our local control away. So I appreciate your insights, and I'll email you later tonight about that. Another thing, too, I want to just talk about that post I did. So we got that letter last week, and I blocked out the names and the address and put it on social media. And, yeah, it took off like wildfire. Saw a lot of good comments. I mean, it reached like 100,000 people. So that's more than people in the city of Pasco. And so this is just definitely an issue, the noise issue, the fireworks and, neighbors blasting their music. We need to start doing something. I'll definitely bring it up at a retreat. Hopefully we're going to have in the next couple of weeks. We need to look at our noise ordinance. We need to start doing something because the quality of life of many residents, like you saw in that letter, is eroding. They shouldn't be going through with that. We need to find a laws or talk with our legislature, so we can figure out a way to enforce these ordinances and stuff. And so, or put it on the police. Maybe this is a mandate, and we want you guys to go after these quality of life issues. So I think we just need to start looking at this. And I'm not saying to outlaw fireworks. I'm not saying that, but we need to start implementing the laws in the books. So I just wanted to kind of bring that to attention and tell you a little bit about the stats I got. Thank you.
Oh, thanks for bringing up that issue, especially about the house, because that has garnered a lot of attention throughout the Tri-Cities, and I think that is well worth our discussions. Anybody have anything else?
Mr. Mayor, just in response to that real quick, visiting with staff, we do have this scheduled to be on the agenda for the February 9th work session for a conversation about fireworks. So we look forward to that conversation on the 9th of February.
Thank you. Appreciate that. Okay, you guys, in light of Martin Luther King Day yesterday, I want to give him the last word. In his 1967 Christmas sermon, he said, "I still have faith in America. I still believe that we will continue to build a coalition of conscience that will lead us to a better day. With this faith, we'll be able to hew out of the mountain of despair a stone of hope." And it's just my prayer that that same faith and hope will guide our work in Pasco. I see no executive session listed. This meeting is adjourned.